World War II, where Black Ops actually begins. The Black Ops timeline begins during World War II, not during the Cold War. Specifically, it begins in 1942 during the Battle of Stalingrad. This matters because several major Black Ops characters and motivations are created here. During the Battle of Stalingrad, a Soviet soldier named Dmitry Petrenko survives an execution after pretending to be dead among fallen soldiers. He is rescued by another Soviet soldier, Viktor Reznov. Reznov is an experienced and respected fighter who immediately takes on a leadership role. Reznov and Petrenko fight together through Stalingrad against German forces. Their objective is to assassinate a German general named Heinrich Amsel, who is responsible for mass executions of Soviet soldiers. After locating him, Petrenko kills Amsel, completing the mission. This establishes Reznov as someone who values direct action and personal accountability rather than orders from above. A key detail here is that Soviet command fails Reznov and his unit multiple times during Stalingrad. Reinforcements are promised and never arrive. This creates Reznov's long-term distrust of authority, especially military leadership. This distrust becomes a core trait that carries through the entire Black Ops series. In 1945, Reznov and Petrenko fight in the final stages of the war in Europe, including the assault on Berlin. Their unit pushes through German defenses and reaches the Reichstag. During the final moments of the battle, Petrenko is shot but survives long enough to raise the Soviet flag over the building. This signals the end of the war in Europe. From a timeline perspective, this moment looks like a victory. From a character perspective, it is not. Reznov has seen his commanders sacrifice soldiers for political goals. He has watched loyalty be repaid with betrayal. The war ends, but Reznov's belief in the system is already broken. This is why World at War is not optional background information. It explains why Reznov later acts independently, ignores orders, and targets specific individuals instead of enemy nations. Black Ops does not start with espionage, it starts with disillusionment. 1945, Project Nova and the betrayal that defines Black Ops. After World War II officially ends, Soviet leadership orders Reznov and Petrenko on a classified cleanup mission. The goal is to locate a German scientist named Dr. Friedrich Steiner. Steiner was involved in developing a chemical weapon called Nova 6. Nova 6 is a nerve agent designed to kill rapidly through airborne exposure. In simple terms, it melts people from the inside out. Subtlety was not part of the design. Reznov and Petrenko locate Steiner in the Arctic aboard a former Nazi research vessel. At this point, the mission changes. Instead of destroying Nova 6, Soviet General Nikita Dragovich decides to test it. Rather than using enemy prisoners, Dragovich orders the gas deployed on his own soldiers. This includes Dmitry Petrenko. Petrenko is exposed to Nova 6 and dies. This is not an accident. This is not collateral damage, it is a deliberate test ordered by Dragovich to observe the weapon's effectiveness. This event is one of the most important facts in the entire Black Ops timeline because it directly creates Reznov's motivation for revenge. Reznov survives the test only because British forces attack the ship during the operation. During the chaos, Reznov sabotages the vessel carrying Nova 6 by rigging it with explosives. His goal is to destroy the weapon so it cannot be used again. However, Dragovich, Steiner, and Lev Kravchenko escape with samples of the gas. Instead of being rewarded for preventing a bioweapon from spreading, Reznov is arrested by the Soviets for disobeying orders. He is labeled a traitor. As punishment, he is sent to a Soviet labor camp known as Vorkuta. At this point in the timeline, three things are firmly established. Dragovich is willing to sacrifice his own people, Nova 6 survives and remains a threat, and Reznov now has specific enemies, not ideological ones. This is the moment Black Ops shifts from a war story to a revenge-driven covert conflict. Nations stop being the enemy, individuals become the target. Vorkuta. How the Black Ops story shifts from war to psychological control. After being arrested by the Soviet military, Viktor Reznov is sent to Vorkuta, a Soviet labor camp located deep inside Russia. Vorkuta is not a standard prison. It is designed for political prisoners, dissidents, and anyone the Soviet state wants erased rather than executed. Prisoners are forced into hard labor with extremely low survival rates. Reznov remains imprisoned at Vorkuta for years. During this time, he is not involved in combat or espionage. However, his hatred toward Dragovich, Kravchenko, and Steiner continues to grow. This matters because Reznov's influence on later events comes from memory and ideology, not direct action. In 1961, a CIA operative named Alex Mason is captured during the failed Bay of Pigs invasion in Cuba. Instead of being executed or imprisoned by Cuba, Mason is handed over to the Soviet Union as a political favor. Mason is then transferred to Vorkuta. At Vorkuta, Mason and Reznov meet. This meeting is intentional on the part of Soviet intelligence. Mason is selected for psychological experimentation as part of a brainwashing program. The Soviets used techniques similar to real-world Cold War-era mind control experiments, including isolation, forced labor, sensory overload, and repetition. Reznov recognizes what is happening to Mason and begins influencing him during these experiments. Reznov repeatedly speaks to Mason about killing Steiner, Kravchenko, and Dragovich. Over time, these instructions become embedded in Mason's subconscious. This is important because Mason does not realize he is being programmed. Reznov organizes a prison uprising and escape attempt. During the escape, Reznov helps Mason reach freedom. Reznov himself does not escape. He is either killed during the attempt or left behind and later executed. The game confirms that Reznov never leaves Vorkuta alive. From this point forward, Reznov no longer exists as a physical character. However, his influence continues. Mason leaves Vorkuta psychologically damaged with implanted triggers connected to a numbers broadcast system. Reznov's voice remains in Mason's mind, guiding his actions without Mason understanding why. This marks the shift in Black Ops from physical warfare to psychological warfare. The enemy is no longer just another army. The enemy is control over memory, identity, and decision-making. 1961. The Bay of Pigs and the creation of a sleeper agent. After escaping Vorkuta, Alex Mason is returned to the United States. At this point, Mason believes he survived imprisonment and torture, but he is unaware that Soviet brainwashing procedures are still active in his mind. These procedures are tied to a broadcast system known as the numbers. When Mason hears specific number sequences, they trigger actions without his conscious control. Shortly after his return, Mason is assigned to a covert CIA operation during the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961. His mission is to assassinate Fidel Castro in Cuba alongside Frank Woods and Joseph Bowman. This operation is conducted off the record, meaning it officially never happens. During the mission, Mason successfully kills a man believed to be Castro. This turns out to be a decoy. The real Castro survives and captures Mason after the extraction fails. Instead of executing him, Castro hands Mason over to the Soviet Union. This confirms Castro's cooperation with Dragovich and Kravchenko. Mason is interrogated by Dragovich and Kravchenko. During this time, the numbers programming is reinforced. Dragovich intends to use Mason as a sleeper agent, meaning Mason can be activated remotely without knowing he is carrying out orders. This concept is based on real Cold War fears surrounding mind control and intelligence manipulation, exaggerated here to dangerous extremes. Eventually, Mason is returned to the CIA. His handlers, including Jason Hudson, believe Mason is stable. He is not. The numbers are still embedded in his mind. Reznov's implanted instructions remain active, pushing Mason toward killing Dragovich, Steiner, and Kravchenko. This period establishes three critical facts. Mason is compromised without knowing it. The CIA does not fully understand the damage done to him, and Reznov's revenge plan is already in motion through Mason. From this point forward, Mason's missions are no longer fully under his control. The numbers program and Mason's loss of control. After returning to active duty, Alex Mason continues working for the CIA under Jason Hudson. Officially, Mason is considered fit for service. In reality, he is still affected by the Soviet brainwashing program tied to the numbers broadcast. The numbers are a sequence of spoken digits transmitted through radio broadcasts. When Mason hears these sequences, they activate programmed responses. Mason does not feel controlled. Instead, he believes the actions he takes are his own decisions. This is what makes the program effective. There is no visible trigger and no awareness of manipulation, and during multiple missions in the early 1960s, Mason begins experiencing memory gaps, headaches, and hallucinations. He frequently hears Viktor Reznov speaking to him, giving instructions and reinforcing the goal of killing Steiner, Kravchenko, and Dragovich. At this point in the timeline, Reznov is already dead. His presence exists only in Mason's mind. One major example occurs during the mission to infiltrate the Ascension Group facility in Kazakhstan. The CIA's stated goal is to stop a Soviet rocket launch and eliminate key scientists connected to Nova 6. Mason completes the mission but becomes fixated on Dragovich instead of the assigned objectives. This fixation is not strategic, it is programmed. Another example occurs in Vietnam, where Mason insists on rescuing a Soviet defector believed to be dead. The defector appears to be Reznov. In reality, this is another hallucination. Other characters do not acknowledge Reznov's presence, and this is one of the first clear signs that Mason's perception of events is unreliable. The numbers program does not force Mason to follow Soviet orders. Instead, Reznov's implanted influence overrides it. The programming intended to turn Mason into a weapon for Dragovich is hijacked and repurposed for Reznov's personal revenge. At this stage in the timeline, Mason is effectively being controlled by two competing forces: Soviet psychological conditioning through the numbers, and Reznov's implanted directives targeting specific individuals. Mason is unaware of both. Steiner and Kravchenko, missions that Mason already completed. As the CIA continues its operations in the 1960s, Mason is repeatedly sent on missions connected to Nova 6. These missions are presented to Mason as ongoing objectives. In reality, several of them are already complete before Mason understands what he has done. One key target is Dr. Friedrich Steiner, the scientist responsible for developing Nova 6. Mason believes Steiner is still alive and actively producing the chemical weapon. However, the truth is that Mason already killed Steiner earlier, while under the influence of the numbers programming. This kill occurred without Mason fully understanding who Steiner was or why he was targeting him. Because Mason's memories are fragmented, the CIA believes Steiner is still at large. Mason himself believes this as well. The mission to locate Steiner is repeated multiple times in Mason's mind, even though the objective has already been achieved. This is an example of how the numbers program damages Mason's ability to track cause and effect. The same situation applies to Lev Kravchenko, Dragovich's second-in-command. Mason hunts Kravchenko believing he is stopping an active threat. In reality, Mason has already captured and killed Kravchenko during an earlier operation. This fact is hidden from Mason due to suppressed memories caused by psychological conditioning. And these events demonstrate how the numbers program does not simply control actions. It disrupts memory continuity. Mason performs tasks, forgets them, and is later sent to complete them again without realizing they're finished. This section confirms that Mason is no longer a reliable source of information, even to himself. His understanding of the timeline is broken, which allows both Soviet and CIA forces to unknowingly operate on false assumptions. Dragovich and the end of the numbers program. By the late 1960s, the CIA confirms that Nikita Dragovich is still alive and actively coordinating Nova 6 operations. Unlike Steiner and Kravchenko, Dragovich has remained out of reach and continues directing events from hidden locations. Dragovich's final plan involves deploying Nova 6 using a submarine-based launch system. The goal is to release the chemical agent along the United States eastern seaboard, causing mass civilian casualties. This plan represents the final phase of Project Nova. Mason Woods and the CIA locate Dragovich's submarine after uncovering the source of the numbers broadcast. The broadcast station is identified as the trigger mechanism keeping sleeper agents active. Destroying it becomes the priority. During the final confrontation, Mason boards Dragovich's submarine. At this moment, the numbers program is still active. Dragovich attempts to reassert control over Mason by repeating the number sequence. This fails. The reason it fails is not because Mason overcomes the programming on his own. It fails because Reznov's implanted directives have already overridden the original conditioning. Mason kills Dragovich, completing Reznov's final objective. Once Dragovich is dead, the numbers program loses its purpose. The broadcast stops. Mason's hallucinations of Reznov cease. For the first time since Vorkuta, Mason regains full control over his actions. This event ends the original Black Ops arc. Project Nova is neutralized. All 3 targets connected to Reznov's betrayal are dead. However, the damage done to Mason's mind is permanent. Aftermath of Black Ops I. After Dragovich is killed, the numbers broadcast ends. This stops the active control mechanisms placed on Alex Mason. However, stopping the broadcast does not undo the psychological damage caused by years of brainwashing, memory suppression, and manipulation. Mason is officially cleared by the CIA and allowed to continue operating. From the agency's perspective, the threat of Nova 6 is eliminated and Project Nova is considered closed. This assessment is incomplete. While the weapon is neutralized, the methods used to control Mason prove that psychological warfare is not only possible, but effective. Jason Hudson and the CIA do not fully understand how close Mason came to being used against the United States. They also fail to recognize that Mason's actions were guided more by implanted motivations than by conscious decision-making. This oversight becomes important later. Frank Woods survives the Black Ops I timeline but carries physical and psychological injuries from the conflict. His experiences contribute to the next generation of Black Ops operations, even though he is no longer an active field leader. 3 long-term consequences are the aftermath of Black Ops I. Psychological manipulation is now a proven weapon, intelligence agencies begin prioritizing covert influence over direct confrontation, and even more crucially, the Black Ops program continues, even though its original targets are eliminated. These consequences lead directly into the next phase of the timeline, where new actors inherit the methods created during Project Nova rather than the people responsible for it. The Cold War continues, from Project Nova to Perseus. Following the events of Black Ops I, the Cold War does not de-escalate. Instead, intelligence agencies shift tactics. Large-scale weapons programs like Nova 6 are no longer the primary focus. Influence, misinformation, and psychological pressure become the preferred tools. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, a new Soviet-aligned figure known as Perseus emerges. Perseus is not a single confirmed individual. Instead, the name functions as an identity used by one or more operatives. The purpose of Perseus is to destabilize Western intelligence operations by spreading doubt, leaking information, and manipulating global events without direct military engagement. Unlike Dragovich, Perseus does not rely on chemical weapons or mass attacks. The strategy focuses on perception. If governments cannot trust their intelligence, their decisions become ineffective. This represents an evolution of the same ideas used in Project Nova, but applied at a broader strategic level. And during this period, the CIA assigns new operatives to counter Perseus. One of the most important is Russell Adler. Adler operates differently from earlier CIA handlers like Jason Hudson. He prioritizes results over rules and is willing to manipulate allies if it advances the mission. This reflects a shift in intelligence culture influenced by failures during earlier Black Ops operations. A key example occurs during covert operations tied to nuclear weapons stored in Europe. Rather than attempting to eliminate Perseus directly, Adler's teams focus on controlling information and limiting exposure. The objective is no longer victory, the objective is containment. This phase of the timeline establishes that the methods pioneered during Black Ops I were not abandoned. They were refined. Psychological warfare replaces physical domination as the primary battlefield. The 1980s, how the past creates the future of Black Ops. During the 1980s, the Black Ops timeline splits into two connected paths. One path follows the final active years of Alex Mason. The other begins forming the world that will later define Black Ops II. Alex Mason continues working in covert operations during this decade. Although the numbers program is no longer active, Mason's decision-making is still shaped by his past conditioning. He operates with a strong focus on eliminating perceived threats before they escalate. This approach reflects lessons learned from Project Nova, rather than standard military doctrine. At the same time, Frank Woods remains involved in Black Ops operations. Woods becomes less of a frontline operative and more of a symbol of institutional memory. He represents continuity between early Black Ops missions and newer operations. His presence helps pass down methods and attitudes shaped by the Cold War. During this period, intelligence agencies increasingly rely on proxy conflicts instead of direct confrontation. This mirrors real-world Cold War strategies, where the United States and the Soviet Union avoided direct war but supported opposing sides in regional conflicts. In the Black Ops timeline, these proxy conflicts create instability rather than resolution. This era also introduces the long-term effects of intelligence interference. Destabilizing regions, supporting coups, and manipulating governments produces unintended consequences. These consequences do not immediately resolve, instead they accumulate. The key point of this section is cause and effect. Actions taken during the Cold War do not disappear when missions end. They create conditions that shape future enemies, future conflicts, and future ideologies. Black Ops II, when consequences become the main conflict. By late 1980s, the focus of Black Ops shifts from stopping weapons to dealing with the results of past interference. This is where Raul Menendez enters the timeline. Menendez is a Nicaraguan national whose life is directly affected by CIA-backed operations in Central America. His family is killed during a covert operation involving U.S. intelligence forces. This event is not treated as an accident within the story. It is shown as a predictable outcome of foreign interference. Menendez does not become a threat immediately. Over time, he builds a global network called Cordis Die. This organization is not a traditional army. It functions through ideology, technology, and public messaging. Its goal is to destabilize governments by turning their own systems against them. At the same time, Alex Mason is still active in the late 1980s. He works with Woods to track Menendez and prevent further escalation. These operations fail to stop Menendez from expanding his influence, and they also unintentionally strengthen his resolve. This establishes a shift in Black Ops. Enemies are no longer hidden generals. The conflict is no longer secret, and public opinion becomes a weapon. This transition sets up the second half of Black Ops II, where the consequences of Cold War decisions reach full visibility. 2025, Black Ops becomes a public war. By 2025, the Black Ops timeline fully enters the modern era. The main conflict is no longer hidden from the public. It is visible, global, and driven by technology. The central figure during this period is David Mason, the son of Alex Mason. David Mason works for JSOC and NATO-led forces. Unlike his father, he is not operating in complete secrecy. His missions are tied to large-scale military responses, drone warfare, and cyber operations. This reflects how modern warfare has shifted away from small covert teams and toward remote, technology-driven combat. Raul Menendez is now the primary antagonist. His organization, Cordis Die, uses hacked drones, automated strike systems, and global media broadcasts to influence public opinion. Menendez understands that modern governments rely heavily on technology. Instead of fighting armies directly, he turns that technology against them. A key example is Menendez gaining control of the world's drone fleet. This removes the advantage traditionally held by military superpowers. The conflict becomes asymmetric. Control of information and systems matters more than troop strength. Unlike earlier Black Ops villains, Menendez does not need to stay hidden. He openly communicates with the public, framing himself as a response to decades of corruption, interference, and exploitation. Whether or not his claims are justified is irrelevant. The message spreads. From this point on, Black Ops is no longer secret, as warfare is automated and remote. Black Ops II, endings and Menendez's long-term impact. The outcome of Black Ops II depends on player choices, but the timeline establishes a consistent result across all endings. Raul Menendez's influence does not end with his defeat. In some outcomes, Menendez is killed. In others, he is imprisoned. In the most extreme case, he survives and continues operating. Regardless of the ending, Cordis Die does not collapse. The organization is decentralized by design, meaning it does not rely on Menendez's physical survival. And this reflects a key concept introduced in Black Ops 2. Ideas are harder to eliminate than people. Even when Menendez is removed from direct control, the systems he exposed remain vulnerable. Drone warfare, automated targeting, and global surveillance do not disappear after the conflict ends. David Mason's role in this period is reactive rather than preventative. He responds to crises created by systems already in place. This contrasts with earlier Black Ops operatives who focused on stopping threats before public exposure. By 2025, that approach is no longer possible. Governments rely more heavily on automation, while public trust in institutions declines. And this point in the Black Ops timeline establishes the idea that Black Ops operations no longer shape the future, rather that they actively chase it. Black Ops 3, when identity replaces ideology. In 2065, the Black Ops conflict no longer centers on nations, ideology, or even control of weapons. The focus shifts to identity itself. This period is defined by the widespread use of cybernetic implants known as direct neural interfaces, or DNIs. DNIs allow soldiers to connect their brains directly to computers, weapon systems, and each other. This enables faster reaction times, shared combat data, and coordinated decision-making. In simple terms, soldiers no longer just follow orders. Their thoughts are integrated into the battlefield. The main character in Black Ops 3 is a cybernetically enhanced soldier whose memories and perceptions are altered following severe injuries. Large portions of the campaign occur inside simulations created by the DNI system. These simulations are indistinguishable from reality to the person experiencing them. This creates a critical problem. When memories can be edited, copied, or replayed, personal identity becomes unreliable. The player believes they are making choices, but many of those experiences are artificial reconstructions of past events or shared memories from other soldiers. A key example is the repeated experience of missions that never occurred in physical reality. These events exist only within the DNI network. The soldier's sense of self becomes fragmented as borrowed memories overwrite personal ones. Unlike previous Black Ops conflicts, there is no clear villain driving these events. The threat is systemic. The technology designed to improve soldiers has removed their ability to distinguish truth from simulation. Black Ops 4, a world without a central story. Black Ops 4 takes place after the events of Black Ops 3, but it does not continue the timeline through a traditional single-player campaign. Instead, it presents the Black Ops world through operator backstories, multiplayer scenarios, and separate narrative fragments. There is no main protagonist and no single chain of events that moves the timeline forward. Instead, Black Ops 4 shows what the world looks like after decades of covert warfare, automation, and psychological manipulation. The absence of a campaign is itself meaningful. It reflects a world where conflict has become constant and normalized. Wars no longer begin or end in clear ways. They persist through systems, technology, and ongoing instability. The operator stories focus on individual soldiers and mercenaries operating in global hotspots. These stories reinforce a key idea. Modern conflict no longer revolves around ideology or loyalty. It revolves around contracts, resources, and survival. From a timeline perspective, Black Ops 4 serves as a transition point. It does not introduce new causes. It shows the long-term environment created by earlier Black Ops decisions. The world is fragmented, militarized, and permanently unstable. This section exists to establish context rather than progression. It explains why later Black Ops conflicts do not return to clean, contained narratives. Black Ops 6. Return to covert operations. Black Ops 6 shifts the timeline back to a grounded Cold War-era setting. The game takes place in 1991 during and after Operation Desert Storm. This period is important because it represents a transition between traditional Cold War conflicts and modern global warfare. Unlike Black Ops 3 and 4, Black Ops 6 returns to covert intelligence work. The focus is on secret operations carried out by rogue and semi-deniable units rather than open military campaigns. Intelligence agencies operate in legal gray areas, often without oversight or public knowledge. A key element of this period is distrust within intelligence organizations themselves. Operatives are no longer certain whether their missions serve national security or hidden agendas. This reflects real-world concerns from the post-Cold War era, when intelligence agencies faced restructuring, reduced transparency, and shifting objectives. Black Ops 6 places an emphasis on small teams operating off the record, and missions designed to erase evidence rather than win battles. And this section of the timeline shows that even after the Cold War officially ends, Black Ops-style operations do not stop. They adapt. The methods created decades earlier remain in use because they are effective, not because they are ethical. Black Ops 7, Psychological Warfare as the final evolution. Black Ops 7 takes place in 2035 and represents the culmination of every method developed throughout the Black Ops timeline. At this point, warfare is no longer defined by territory, weapons stockpiles, or even technology alone. The primary battlefield is human perception. Military and intelligence forces now focus on psychological operations, cognitive manipulation, and behavior prediction. Instead of controlling minds through direct programming like the numbers broadcast, systems are designed to influence decision-making subtly over time. The goal is not obedience, the goal is predictability. Advanced data analysis allows organizations to anticipate reactions before actions occur. Media manipulation, algorithm-driven narratives, and targeted misinformation campaigns replace traditional covert missions. Conflict becomes invisible. Most of the population is unaware it is happening. David Mason operates in this era as a senior commander rather than a field operative. His role reflects the evolution of Black Ops itself. Decisions are made far from combat zones, outcomes are shaped without visible force. The damage caused is long-term and difficult to trace. And this phase of the timeline connects directly back to earlier events. Project Nova proved minds could be altered. The Numbers program proved behavior could be triggered. Perseus proved perception could be destabilized. At this point in the timeline, Black Ops is no longer a set of missions. It is a system that operates constantly, without clear beginnings or endings. Across its timeline, Black Ops shows the evolution of warfare methods, not one continuous war. It begins in World War II with betrayal and revenge, leading to Project Nova and human experimentation. During the Cold War, control shifts to psychological conditioning, seen through Alex Mason and the Numbers program. By Black Ops 2, conflict becomes public and technology-driven, with figures like Raul Menendez exploiting global systems. Black Ops 3 erases certainty through neural interfaces, while later entries show covert influence becoming constant, invisible, and permanent. Mission's not over. Choose your next objective.